The Battle of Earth became the largest space engagement in recorded history. Over 50,000 ships filled the space around humanity's homeworld, and for 16 hours the very fabric of space seemed to burn with weapons fire. But this was not the battle the Rakathi had planned. Their systems kept failing at critical moments. Navigation would glitch just as they tried to maneuver. Shields would flicker when they needed them most. Weapons would misfire or refuse to activate. Engineer Minho's Ghost Protocol virus had spread through their entire fleet, and every second it grew smarter, more disruptive, more effective. Fleet Commander Yunji led the human counterattack with precision that the Rakathi could only dream of. She didn't command from a safe distance. Her ship was in the thick of the fighting, coordinating thousands of vessels in real time. Group 7 hit their command cluster from above. Group 12, disable those carriers on the left flank. Group 20, protect the civilian evacuation ships. Move, move, move! Her tactical officer looked at her with concern. Commander, you're giving orders to 30 groups simultaneously. That's impossible. Probably, Yunji agreed, not taking her eyes off the displays. Good thing I'm too busy to worry about what's impossible. The Rakathi fought with discipline and courage, but they were fighting an enemy that refused to follow any predictable pattern. Human ships would cluster together, then scatter. They'd retreat, then suddenly attack from an unexpected angle. They used debris as cover, disabled ships as shields, and even their own damaged vessels as weapons, ramming them into Rakathi cruisers. Captain Tai Yang led a boarding party directly onto the Rakathi flagship. It was a suicidal mission by any reasonable military standard. His team of 200 Marines launched from their ship in small boarding pods, weaving through the massive battle toward the enemy command vessel. Sir, this is crazy, said Lieutenant Han over the comm system. Yep, Tai Yang replied cheerfully. That's why it might work. The pods attached to the Rakathi flagship's hull like parasites. Cutting tools burned through the armor. Marines poured into the ship, fighting through corridors never designed for combat. The Rakathi guards inside were tough, disciplined, and well-trained. But they'd never fought humans in close quarters before. Humans didn't fight fair. They used every trick, every improvised weapon, every dirty tactic they could think of. Tai Yang's Marines threw broken equipment to distract guards, used smoke to blind sensors, and fought with a ferocity that shocked the Rakathi defenders. It took 3 hours, but Tai Yang's team fought their way to the command center. War Marshal Theron stood in the middle of the bridge, surrounded by his officers, watching the battle being lost on every display. You cannot win this, Theron said as Tai Yang entered with his Marines. Kill me, and another commander will take my place. Tai Yang lowered his weapon. We don't want to kill you. We want you to watch what happens next. Across the galaxy, something unprecedented was happening. While the massive fleets battled at Earth, smaller human forces were hitting every Rakathi-held system simultaneously, not to destroy them, but to disable their defenses and broadcast the truth. Hacker Collective leader Dong Hyun coordinated the cyber warfare from his ship, managing hundreds of infiltration teams across Rakathi space. His screen showed system after system falling, not to military force but to information warfare. We're broadcasting Dayun's findings on every Rakathi channel, he reported to Admiral Sung Hoon. Every civilian, every soldier, everyone is learning the truth about the persisters, about humanity's history with them, about why their leaders really started this war. The effect was immediate and devastating. Rakathi citizens learned that their leaders had lied about humanity being a new threat. They learned that the Rakathi had faced humans before and barely survived. They learned that this war was born from ancient fear, not present danger. Protests began on Rakathi worlds, not supporting humanity but questioning their own government. Why had they been lied to? Why were they committing genocide against a species that had done nothing to them? Why were all their defenses stripped away for a war based on old fears? Marine Sergeant Bora led a team that reached the Rakathi homeworld itself. Their mission was simple: disable the planetary defense grid. What they found changed the entire nature of the war. Command, this is Sergeant Bora. We've disabled the grid, but you need to see this. The video feed showed a Rakathi civilian center, not a military base. A place filled with families, children playing, schools operating. The Rakathi weren't just warriors. They had civilians, innocents, lives beyond war. Bora stood in the middle of a Rakathi playground, watching young Rakathi children run and play, unaware that their world's defenses had just fallen. An adult Frakathi approached her slowly, hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "Are you here to kill us?" the Frakathi civilian asked. Bora looked at the alien, then at the children, then at her team. "No, we're here to end a war." Back at Earth, the battle was ending. The Frakathi fleet was crippled, not destroyed. Their ships floated dead in space, systems offline, unable to fight but not burning wreckage. Human ships surrounded them carefully, weapons ready but not firing. Admiral Sung Hoon opened a communication channel to every ship in the battle space, both human and Frakathi. "This is Admiral Sung Hoon of the Terran Defense Fleet. To all Frakathi vessels, stand down. Power down your weapons. We have disabled your fleet. We have taken your flagship and we have reached your homeworld, but we have not destroyed them. This can end now, or it can continue until nothing is left on either side. The choice is yours." On the Frakathi flagship, War Marshal Theron stared at the tactical displays showing his homeworld surrounded by human forces. His entire fleet defeated, his empire exposed. Everything he'd fought for crumbled. "Why?" he asked Taeyang. "Why did you not destroy us? We came to erase every trace of your species. We would have shown no mercy." Taeyang looked at the old warrior. "That's the difference between us. You fight to destroy. We fight to survive. And we're smart enough to know that genocide doesn't solve anything. It just creates the next war." A communication came in from the Frakathi High Council. They were requesting terms of surrender. The word surrender had never been used in Frakathi military history. Until now, General Hyun-woo stood in Earth's command center, looking at the surrender request. Around him, his officers waited for his decision. The fate of two species hung in the balance. "Sir, what do we do?" asked Colonel Soo-jin. Hyun-woo thought about Proxima Station, thought about the 4 colony worlds that had been destroyed, thought about the millions of dead, thought about how easy it would be to order every Frakathi ship destroyed, every Frakathi world bombed into submission. Then he thought about those children on the Frakathi homeworld, about Frakathi families who had no part in this war, about breaking the cycle of violence that had defined galactic history for thousands of years. "We accept their surrender," he said finally. "We end this war today, and we do it with mercy because that's what makes us different. That's what makes us human." Not everyone agreed. Some human commanders wanted vengeance for the dead. Some wanted to see the Frakathi punished for their crimes. Arguments broke out across military channels. It was Medic Kyung-soo who finally ended the debate. He broadcast a message from his hospital on Earth, standing among wounded soldiers and civilians. "I've spent this entire war putting people back together, humans who were torn apart by Frakathi weapons. And you know what every single one of them asked me when they woke up? They asked if their families were safe, if their friends survived, if there was hope for tomorrow. Not a single one asked me to kill more Frakathi. They wanted the killing to stop." He looked directly into the camera. "We're tired. We're hurt. We've lost so much, but we're still human. And that means we're still capable of choosing mercy over revenge. If we destroy the Frakathi now, we become what they feared we were. Chaos, destruction, monsters, is that who we want to be?" The silence that followed was heavy. Then slowly, commanders across the human fleet began agreeing. One by one, they accepted the surrender terms. They chose to end the war with mercy. War Marshal Theron listened to these transmissions from the bridge of his captured flagship. He didn't understand. Everything in his training, his experience, his entire understanding of warfare told him that victors destroyed the defeated. That was the order of things. Why? He asked again, this time to himself. Taeyang heard him. "Because we've been where you are. Humanity has been conquered, enslaved, nearly destroyed many times in our history. We know what it's like to be helpless, and we decided a long time ago that we'd never become the kind of species that enjoys making others feel that way. You are truly chaos," Theron said quietly. "We were right to fear you, but wrong about why." The Frakathi came with fury that the galaxy had never seen. They brought weapons that were forbidden by every treaty, technology that had been locked away for centuries, and a determination to erase humanity from existence no matter the cost. 4 human colony worlds died in the first wave. The Frakathi didn't invade them. They simply destroyed them. Planet-cracking weapons split worlds apart. Biological agents turned atmospheres into poison. Temporal distortion devices aged everything. On the surface by 1,000 years in a matter of hours. turning cities into dust and people into fossils. Admiral Sung-hoon watched the reports come in from his command ship. New Seoul Colony, 2 million dead. Haven's Rest, 3 million dead. New Busan, 5 million dead. Harmony Station, 1 million dead. The numbers kept climbing. Each report felt like a physical blow. "Sir, the fleets are asking for orders," said his communications officer quietly. Sung-hoon stared at the tactical display. The Rakathi were pushing forward in a massive wave, destroying everything in their path. Behind them, their empire lay empty, all forces committed to this final assault. It was exactly the opening humanity needed. But the price was horrific. "Send the attack orders to all fleets," he said finally. "Operation Endgame begins now, and may whatever gods are listening forgive us for what we're about to do." On New Seoul Colony, the last human stronghold, civilians fought alongside soldiers. The Rakathi had surrounded the planet with a fleet of 100 ships, launching assault after assault. The colony should have fallen in days. It held for 6 months. A young teacher named Minji found herself holding a plasma rifle she barely knew how to use, standing in a defensive line with her students. Teenagers who should have been worried about exams were now worried about staying alive until tomorrow. "Why are they so determined to kill us all?" one of her students asked during a brief break in the fighting. Minji thought about it, checking her rifle's charge. "Because we scare them. We don't fit into their ordered universe. We change, we adapt, we survive when we shouldn't. To them, that's chaos. To us, that's just Tuesday." The student laughed weakly, then picked up their own weapon. "I kind of like being scary." Intelligence Officer Da-Yun achieved something no human thought possible. She infiltrated a Vrakathi data facility by disguising herself as a member of a species the Vrakathi had conquered long ago. She spent 3 weeks inside enemy territory, slowly working her way deeper into their systems. What she found changed everything. In the deepest, oldest archives protected by security that took her 2 days to crack, she found the truth. Records going back 1,500 years. Records of a war the Vrakathi had almost lost. Records of a species they called the Persisters, who had pushed the Vrakathi to the edge of extinction. The descriptions matched humans perfectly. The ability to adapt, the refusal to surrender, the chaos that couldn't be predicted or controlled. But the oldest records mentioned something else. The Persisters had come from a distant world, taken by another species for experiments, modified and enhanced, then escaped. Some returned to their homeworld. Others vanished into deep space. Da-Eun's hands shook as she read the final entry. The Vrakathi had eventually captured some of the Persisters and studied their genetic code. The match was undeniable. The Persisters were human ancestors, taken from Earth over 3,000 years ago, enhanced with technology, and scattered across the galaxy. Most had died. Some had made it home. And a few had nearly destroyed the Vrakathi Empire before they disappeared. She copied everything and ran. Behind her, alarms screamed as the Vrakathi realized what had been stolen. But Da-Eun was already on a ship, jumping to faster-than-light travel, carrying the truth that would reshape the war. Dr. Ji-won and scientist Hae-won worked together on the weapon that would change everything. Not a weapon of destruction, but a weapon of adaptation. They called it the recursive algorithm virus. "It learns," Ji-won explained to Admiral Sung-hoon. "Every time the Vrakathi create a countermeasure, the virus learns from it and evolves. It's not programmed to attack in one specific way. It's programmed to learn how to attack in whatever way works." "So it gets smarter every time they fight back?" "Exactly. It's like fighting an opponent who learns from every move you make and adjusts faster than you can." Hae-won added, "The Vrakathi strength is their perfection. Their systems are designed flawlessly. But flawless design is static. This virus is chaos, and chaos always finds a way." The virus was deployed across Vrakathi networks within a week. At first they countered it easily, but then it adapted, and adapted again, and again. Soon, Vrakathi ships were experiencing random system failures. Navigation would suddenly reverse directions. Weapons would power down mid-battle. Life support would fluctuate. Nothing fatal, but everything disruptive. The Vrakathi tried to shut down their networks entirely, but modern war requires communication and coordination. Without their networks, their massive fleet became a collection of isolated ships, unable to work together effectively. Meanwhile, Earth itself came under siege. The largest Vrakathi fleet ever assembled surrounded humanity's home world. 5,000 ships blocked out the stars. Billions of humans looked up at skies filled with enemy vessels and prepared for the end. But General Hyun-woo stood in Earth's command center with a calm expression that confused everyone around him. "Sir, they have us surrounded," reported a tactical officer. "Good," Hyun-woo replied. "That's exactly where we want them." He opened a channel to every human ship in the galaxy. Military, civilian, commercial, research, every single vessel with a human crew. "This is General Hyun-woo. The Vrakathi have made their final mistake. They came to Earth thinking they would end humanity where it began. Instead, they've put their entire fleet in one place, leaving everything else undefended. All ships, all crews, return to Earth immediately. But not to defend. We're going to use Earth as the biggest trap in galactic history." Across human space, thousands of ships turned toward Earth. Not to hide behind it, but to use it as bait. Medic Kyung-soo worked in one of Earth's emergency hospitals, treating wounded soldiers and civilians. He saw the fear in their eyes, but also something else. Determination, defiance, hope. "Doc, are we going to make it?" asked a young soldier, missing her left arm. Kyung-soo bandaged her wound carefully. "I've been a medic for 20 years, served in 3 wars before this one. You know what I've learned? Humans are terrible at knowing when to quit. We just keep going. So yeah, we're going to make it, because that's what we do." The soldier smiled weakly. "That's not very scientific." "No," Kyung-soo agreed. "But it's very human." Intelligence Officer Da-eun arrived at Earth with her stolen data just as the Vrakathi fleet was preparing its final assault. She transmitted everything to Admiral Sung-hoon and General Hyun-woo. They read the reports in silence. "So we've fought them before," Hyun-woo said quietly. "Our own ancestors nearly destroyed them. And they've been terrified of us ever since." Sung-hoon added, "This whole war, their determination to wipe us out completely, it's not because they think we're weak, it's because they know we're dangerous." "They fear us," Da-eun confirmed. "They've always feared us." Hyun-woo smiled grimly. "Good. Fear makes people make mistakes. Let's show them just how right they are to be afraid." The trap was set. The Vrakathi fleet surrounded Earth, preparing to unleash every weapon they had. They didn't know that every human ship in the galaxy was converging on their position. They didn't know about the virus corrupting their systems. They didn't know that humanity had learned their greatest secret. War Marshal Theron stood on his flagship's command deck, looking at Earth floating peacefully below. Such a small world, so insignificant. Yet from this world had come the chaos that threatened everything he believed in. "Charge all weapons," he ordered. "Target every city, every installation, every structure. We end this now." His weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, our systems are experiencing anomalies." "Anomalies?" "Random failures, unexpected behaviors. It's happening across the fleet." Theron felt a cold sensation in his chest. "The humans. They've done something to our systems. We're working to counter it, but..." The tactical display lit up with new contacts. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Human ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel all around the Vrakathi fleet. "Sir, we're surrounded," the tactical officer reported, voice shaking. Theron looked at the display, understanding dawning. "They used their home world as bait. We committed everything to this attack and they brought everything to defend it." "Orders, sir?" For the first time in his long military career, War Marshal Theron had no answer. 6 months after the war ended, the galaxy looked completely different. The Vrakathi Empire had collapsed not from destruction but from revelation. When their citizens learned the truth about the war, about the lies their leaders had told, about the genocide they had nearly committed based on ancient fears, the government fell apart peacefully. The Vrakathi Remnant Council formed from military officers and civilian leaders who wanted to rebuild their civilization. They requested an audience with Earth's government, not to negotiate terms but to understand what would happen next. Ambassador Yuna stood in the rebuilt Galactic Concord chamber, the same chamber where she had stood alone while 40 species refused to help humanity. Now every representative watched her with careful attention, some with respect, some with fear, all with recognition that the galaxy's power structure had fundamentally changed. The Vrikathi Council wishes to address this body, Yuna announced. They have asked for permission to speak. Earth grants this permission. War Marshal Theron entered the chamber. He was no longer a war marshal. That title had been stripped away along with all military ranks. He was simply Theron now, representing a broken people trying to find a path forward. He walked to the center platform where Yuna had once stood alone. The symbolism was not lost on anyone present. He stood where humanity had stood, asking for understanding from a galaxy that had abandoned them. I am Theron, former military commander of the Vrikathi Empire. I speak for my people today not as a warrior, but as someone who has learned a terrible truth. He paused, gathering his thoughts. We studied humanity for 200 cycles. We knew your history of warfare, innovation, and survival. We thought we understood you. We were completely wrong. He looked around the chamber at the gathered species. We thought your strength came from chaos, from refusing to follow proper order. We thought eliminating you would protect galactic civilization. What we didn't understand was that your chaos is not disorder. It is adaptation. Every time we struck you, you became stronger. Every loss made you more determined. We tried to break the unbreakable. The Quellan representative spoke up. You nearly succeeded. You destroyed 4 human worlds, killed millions. Yes, Theron agreed. And they could have destroyed us completely in return. They had our homeworld surrounded. They had disabled every defense we possessed. They could have ended our species with a single order. He paused. They chose mercy instead. Dr. Jiwan sat in the audience listening. Next to her was a Vrikathi scientist named Kelthon, studying her research on adaptation and survival. It had been strange at first working with a former enemy, but Kelthon had proven to be brilliant, and together they were developing new theories about how species evolved under pressure. Your people are remarkable, Kelthon said quietly during a break in the proceedings. We spent centuries building perfect systems that never changed. You spent centuries building systems that changed constantly. We thought our approach was superior. It was superior for stability, Jiwan replied. But stability isn't everything. Sometimes you need to be able to change quickly, even if it means being imperfect. We are learning this, Kelthon said, slowly, painfully, but we are learning. General Hyun-woo had been offered the position of Supreme Commander of the new Galactic Defense Forces. It was unprecedented. A human, leading a military force made up of dozens of species including the Vrikathi. Many questioned whether it was wise to give so much power to the species that had just won a major war. He stood before the Galactic Council, considering the offer. Around him, representatives from across known space waited for his answer. I'll accept, he said finally, but on one condition. The Vrikathi must be included as equal partners, not as defeated enemies but as allies who have something valuable to teach us. The chamber erupted in argument. Many species protested. How could former enemies be trusted? How could the Vrikathi be treated as equals after what they'd done? Hyun-woo waited for the noise to die down. The Vrikathi have discipline, strategic thinking, and military training that is exceptional. Humanity has adaptability, creativity, and survival instincts that are equally exceptional. Separately, we nearly destroyed each other. Together, we could protect this galaxy from threats neither of us could face alone. Theron stood and walked to stand beside Hyun-woo. We do not deserve this trust, but we will spend generations proving we can honor it. Captain Tae-yang took command of the first joint human Vrikathi exploration fleet. His crew was mixed, humans and Vrikathi working side by side. The first few weeks were awkward. Cultural differences clashed. Communication was difficult. Old suspicions died hard, but slowly the crew learned to work together. The Vrikathi learned that human unpredictability could be useful when exploring unknown space. Humans learned that Vrikathi discipline and organization made complex operations run smoothly. They began to complement each other. Captain, we're approaching an unknown system, reported his Vrikathi navigator Solvan. Any signs of life? Tae-yang asked. Unusual energy readings. Could be technological. Could be dangerous, added the human tactical officer. Tae-young smiled. Then it's a good thing we've got the best of both our species on this ship. Let's go see what we find. Colonel Soo-jin, Engineer Min-ho, and Pilot Jae-hee became instructors at the new Galactic Military Academy. They taught tactics, engineering, and flight to students from across known space. Young Vrakathi soldiers sat next to young human recruits learning together. The key to human tactics, Soo-jin explained to a class, is accepting that no plan survives contact with reality. You make the best plan you can. Then you adapt when everything goes wrong, because everything will go wrong. A Vrakathi student raised their hand. But sir, proper military planning accounts for all variables. That's the thing, Soo-jin replied. You can't account for all variables. The universe is too complex, too chaotic. So instead of trying to control everything, you learn to adapt to anything. That's the difference between surviving and winning. Min-ho taught engineering classes where Vrakathi precision met human improvisation. Your shield design is perfect, he told a Vrakathi student. It will work flawlessly exactly as designed. Which means anyone who figures out how it works can defeat it. The student looked confused. Then how do we improve it? A human student spoke up. Make it imperfect. Make it change. Make it adapt. But that violates every principle of good design, the Vrakathi protested. Yes, Min-ho agreed, and that's exactly why it works. Jae-hee's flight classes were legendary. She taught students to trust their instincts, to stop overthinking, to become one with their craft instead of just controlling it. The Vrakathi students struggled with this concept more than any other. Flying by instinct is inefficient, one argued. Calculated precision is superior. Jae-hee took the student up in a two-seat trainer. She flew through an asteroid field at speeds that should have been impossible, dodging rocks that appeared with no warning, making split-second decisions that computers couldn't match. Your computer could have avoided those obstacles more efficiently, she said when they landed, but I got us through faster because I didn't waste time calculating. I just moved. Both approaches work. The question is, which one do you need right now? The student thought about it. Both, sometimes calculation, sometimes instinct. Now you're learning. Ambassador Yuna became the architect of the new Galactic Charter. It was a document designed to prevent any species from ever threatening another with extinction again. Every species had equal voice. Disputes would be mediated, not fought, and military force would only be used defensively, never for conquest. You're being idealistic, said the Thorian delegate. Eventually someone will violate this charter. Probably, Yuna agreed. But now when they do, they'll face a united galaxy instead of isolated species too afraid to help each other. That's what humanity learned. That's what the Vrakathi learned. Alone we almost destroyed each other. Together we can face anything. 20 years passed. The war became history, then legend, then lessons taught to new generations. The humans and Vrakathi who had fought each other now worked together across the galaxy. On a border world named New Hope, human and Vrakathi colonists built a city together. Their children played in mixed groups, speaking both languages, learning both cultures. To them, the war was ancient history that adults talked about sometimes, but not their reality. General Hyunwoo, now retired, visited the colony with Theron. They walked through the city streets watching the mixed population living in peace. We were so sure you would destroy us, Theron said quietly. Every strategic analysis said that any species with your capabilities would seek dominance. We tried dominance once in our history, Hyunwoo replied. We fought each other on our home world for thousands of years, built empires that crushed those beneath them. Eventually we learned that dominance doesn't lead anywhere good. Cooperation does. A young Vrakathi child ran up to them, followed by a human child. Are you the generals from the old war? The Vrakathi child asked excitedly. We were, Hyunwoo confirmed. Did you really fight each other? We did. The human child looked confused. But you're friends now. Why were you fighting? The Vrakathi expected humans to fight like every other species they had conquered. They expected formations, honor codes, and predictable military tactics. What they got instead was something they had no training to handle. Pure creative chaos. Colonel Soo-jin led the first operation that made the Vrakathi commanders question everything they thought they knew about warfare. Her team of 30 soldiers infiltrated a Vrakathi command station by hiding in a shipment of medical supplies. The Vrakathi never checked it, because who would be crazy enough to fold themselves into boxes barely large enough for a child and survive 3 days without food or water? Humans would. That's who. When Sujin and her team emerged, they didn't try to fight the 1,000 Rikati soldiers on the station. Instead, they went straight to the data core, downloaded every piece of intelligence they could grab, and then set off a chain reaction in the station's power systems that made it look like an accident. By the time the Rikati figured out what happened, Sujin's team was already gone, and Human Command knew the location of every Rikati fleet in their territory. "This is not warfare," War Marshal Theron said, staring at the report. "This is deception and trickery." "This is human," replied his second-in-command. "We were warned they do not fight with honor. Honor is not optional. It is the foundation of all proper military conduct." "Perhaps we should tell them that, sir. Engineer Minho created something the Rikati would come to fear more than any weapon. He called them ghosts. They were tiny machines, smaller than a grain of sand, that could slip through any shield, any armor, any defensive system the Rikati had. Once inside a ship, the ghost would start rewriting code, changing systems, making the ship do things it was never meant to do. The first time the ghosts were used in battle, a Rikati cruiser suddenly turned its weapons on the ships next to it. The Rikati crews panicked, thinking their comrades had gone insane. By the time they realized it was sabotage, 6 more ships had been compromised. The Rikati fleet tore itself apart while human ships watched from a safe distance. "Did we win?" asked a young ensign on Minho's ship. "We didn't fight," Minho replied with a tired smile. "We just made them fight themselves. Sometimes that's smarter." The Battle of Kepler 442 became the first major engagement where the Rikati were forced to retreat. Captain Taeyang, who everyone thought had died at Proxima Station, had actually escaped in one of the evacuation ships. He'd been given command of a small fleet, 20 ships against a Rikati force of over 200. The smart move would have been to run. Taeyang was not interested in smart moves. He was interested in making the Rikati pay. He lured their fleet into a dense nebula filled with gas and dust that blocked sensors and communications. The Rikati followed, confident that their superior numbers meant victory no matter what the terrain. They learned too late that terrain matters a lot when you can't see. Taeyang's ships appeared and disappeared in the nebula like ghosts, hitting hard and vanishing before the Rikati could respond. They used the gas clouds as cover, the dense particles as shields, and the Rikati's own size against them. The massive Rikati ships couldn't maneuver quickly in the tight spaces between gas clouds. The smaller human ships darted through gaps the Rikati couldn't follow. After 6 hours of fighting, the Rikati fleet retreated. They'd lost 70 ships. The humans had lost 3. War Marshal Theron watched the battle recordings with growing unease. "They turned our advantage into a disadvantage. How did they know the nebula would favor smaller ships? Perhaps they calculated it, sir." "No, calculation would have told them to run." "They didn't calculate. They improvised. They saw an opportunity and took a risk." Theron paused. "We don't train our officers to take risks. Should we start, sir?" "No, that would make us like them. And we are nothing like them." Pilot Jae-hee became a legend in just 3 months. She flew her fighter craft in ways that physics said were impossible. Other pilots watched her recordings, trying to figure out how she survived maneuvers that should have torn her ship apart or crushed her body from the G-forces. "I don't think about what's impossible," she explained to a reporter. "I just think about what needs to happen next. The ship and I figure out the how while we're doing it." In one famous engagement, Jae-hee flew her fighter backwards while spinning, shooting at targets behind her while dodging fire from targets in front. When asked how she maintained orientation, she said she didn't. She just trusted her instincts. The Rikati pilots couldn't understand it. They flew by strict training and calculated precision. Jae-hee flew by feeling and instinct. When they tried to predict her next move, she'd already made 3 moves they couldn't predict. Dr. Jiwon's research finally bore fruit when she cracked the Rikati shield technology. She discovered that their shields operated on fixed frequencies that never changed. It made them strong but predictable. She designed a weapon that would shift through hundreds of frequencies per second until it found the right one, then focus all power on that frequency. The first time it was used, a Rikati capital ship's shields collapsed in seconds. The second time, an entire battle group lost shields simultaneously. By the third time, the Rikati were scrambling to update their technology, but every time they changed their shields, Jiwon figured out the new frequency within days. "How do you keep breaking their code so quickly?" asked her assistant. I don't think like a Vrikati engineer, Jiwan replied. They design for perfection and permanence. I design for adaptation and change. Their shield that never changes is perfect, until someone figures out its one frequency. My systems that constantly change are imperfect, but impossible to pin down. Perfection is brittle. Adaptation is flexible. After 6 months of warfare, the impossible was happening. Humanity was winning. The species that everyone expected to be destroyed within weeks was pushing the mighty Vrikati Empire back system by system. News spread across the galaxy. Species that had refused to help humanity now watched in amazement. The Vrikati had never retreated before. Never. In 1,000 years of military history, they had never once pulled back from a conflict. Now they were pulling back from humans. Ambassador Yuna stood again in the Galactic Concord chamber. This time the other species representatives looked at her very differently. How? Asked the Quellan representative simply. How are we winning? Yuna smiled coldly. You all spent so long living in peace that you forgot what desperation looks like. The Vrikati spent so long winning that they forgot how to adapt. Humans, we've been desperate since we climbed out of caves on Earth. We know how to struggle. We know how to survive. And we're really, really good at it. But War Marshal Theron was not defeated. He was angry. In the Vrikati command center, deep in their home system, he gathered his military leaders. They think they have won. They think their tricks and chaos can defeat order and discipline. They are wrong. I am authorizing total war protocols. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier in our empire will be directed at humanity. We will crush them so completely that the galaxy will forget they ever existed. His second-in-command hesitated. Sir, that will leave our other territories undefended. There are no other territories. There is only the human problem. Once they are eliminated, we will reclaim everything else. But if we do not focus everything on destroying them now, their chaos will spread and infect the entire galaxy. The order went out. The entire Vrikati Empire mobilized for one purpose, the complete and total extermination of humanity. When human intelligence learned of this, there was a moment of silence in the war room. Then Commander Hyunwoo, now promoted to general, spoke quietly. They're throwing everything at us. Every ship they have. Can we hold? Asked Colonel Sujin. Hyunwoo looked at the star maps showing Vrikati fleet movements. Thousands of ships, maybe tens of thousands, all heading toward human space. Holding isn't the plan, he said finally. If they're sending everything to us, they're leaving everything else undefended. Time to show them what human strategy really looks like. The warning came without mercy. Every screen across human space lit up at the same moment with the same terrifying message. A massive alien face appeared, covered in dark scales and burning orange eyes that seemed to look through the camera and into every human soul watching. The creature's voice was deep and final, like the sound of a closing tomb. I am War Marshal Theron of the Vrikati Empire. We have watched your species for 200 cycles. We have studied your chaos, your unpredictability, your refusal to follow the natural order of civilized space. The Galactic Concord has debated what to do with humanity. That debate is over. We have made the decision for them. Humanity will be removed from existence. You have one solar cycle to prepare. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. Your extinction begins now. The transmission ended. For several seconds, the entire human civilization stood frozen in shocked silence. Then the chaos began. Commander Hyunwoo was in his quarters aboard the patrol ship Dancing Star when the message played. He sat on his bunk, hands clasped together, watching the alien's face disappear from his screen. Around him, he could hear his crew shouting, some in fear, others in anger. He closed his eyes and took a long breath. When he opened them again, something had changed in his expression. Something hard and determined. He walked to the bridge where his crew was gathered around the main display. They all turned to look at him, waiting for orders, waiting for some kind of answer to the impossible situation they now faced. Sir, what do we do? Asked Lieutenant Bora, her voice shaking slightly. Hyunwoo looked at each of them carefully. We do what humans have always done when someone says we can't survive. We prove them wrong. On Earth, in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Concord Embassy, Ambassador Yuna stood before representatives of 40 alien species. Most of them would not meet her eyes. The chamber was circular, with each species occupying a floating platform around the edges. In the center, Yuna stood alone on the human platform, surrounded by aliens who had been friends and trading partners just hours ago. "You must understand our position," said the Quellan representative, a tall being made of what looked like living crystal. "The Rakathi Empire controls 17 star systems. They have never lost a war, never. If we defend humanity, they will turn their weapons on us next. We have families," added the Thorian delegate, a creature that resembled a floating jellyfish filled with lights. "We have worlds to protect. Humanity is one species. We are many." Yuna looked around the chamber slowly. "I see. So when they come for the next species they decide is too different, too chaotic, too inconvenient, you'll all stand together then? Or will you find another reason to look away?" None of them answered. The silence told her everything she needed to know. "Then humanity will stand alone," she said quietly. "Nothing new for us." Across the galaxy at Horizon's Edge Research Station, Dr. Ji-Wan was deep in the archives when the Declaration of Extinction played. She barely noticed it at first, absorbed in ancient texts from dead civilizations. When her assistant burst into the room shouting about the Vrakathi threat, Ji-Wan looked up with distant, thoughtful eyes. "Doctor, did you hear me? The Rakathi are going to destroy Earth. Destroy all of us." Ji-Wan stood slowly, pulling up a file on her data tablet. "I heard. But I've been reading something interesting. There's a species in Vrakathi history they never talk about. They call them the Persisters. According to these fragments, the Persisters nearly wiped out the Vrakathi civilization 1,000 years ago. The texts describe them as impossible to predict, impossible to control, and impossible to defeat through normal warfare. What happened to them?" Ji-Wan's eyes went distant again. "That's the strange part. The records just say they vanished. But there's a phrase that keeps repeating in the Vrakathi texts. They feared the Persisters because they never stopped coming, never stopped adapting, and never stopped finding new ways to survive." She looked up at her assistant with a strange smile. "Doesn't that sound familiar?" On Proxima Station, Captain Taeyang was reviewing supply reports when the alarm started screaming. He ran to the command center and saw his worst nightmare on the screens. A Vrakathi war fleet had dropped out of faster-than-light travel just outside the station. 50 massive ships, each one bristling with weapons. The station had maybe 3 patrol craft and a handful of defensive platforms. "Get everyone to the evacuation ships," Taeyang ordered immediately. "Everyone. Right now." "Sir, there's not enough time. The fleet is charging weapons." Taeyang looked at the timer counting down on his screen. 4 minutes until the Vrakathi opened fire. The station held 40,000 people. They'd be lucky to evacuate 4,000 in that time. "Then we save who we can," he said quietly. The next 4 minutes felt like 4 hours. Ships launched from the station in a desperate stream, loaded far beyond safe capacity. The Vrakathi fleet didn't move, didn't react. They just waited with cold patience for their weapons to fully charge. When the firing began, Taeyang was still on the station. He'd refused to leave until the last civilian was away. He stood on the command deck and watched through the windows as brilliant beams of energy tore through the station's outer rings. The metal screamed. The air rushed out into space, and Taeyang transmitted one final message before the communication system failed. "This is Captain Taeyang of Proxima Station. We are under attack by Vrakathi forces. 40,000 souls were here. We saved 8,000. Remember us. Remember that we tried. Remember that humanity does not surrender easily. If I die here, I die human, and I die fighting. That's more than the Vrakathi can understand." The transmission cut out as the station's core exploded. The Vrakathi fleet watched the debris scatter across space. Then they turned as one and jumped back to faster-than-light travel, heading toward their next target. The news of Proxima Station's destruction spread across human space within hours. The images played on every channel. The casualty numbers climbed higher with each report. 32,000 confirmed dead, 8,000 evacuated. Captain Taeyang listed as killed in action. But something unexpected happened. Humans didn't panic. They didn't flee to the far edges of space to hide. Instead, they got angry. Really angry. Recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. Factories shifted to military production without being asked. Scientists began developing new weapons. Engineers started designing new defenses. And everywhere, on every human world and station and ship, people started saying the same thing. They want a war? Let's give them one they'll never forget. Commander Hyunwoo watched the reports coming in from across human territory. Millions volunteering, billions of credits being donated to the defense funds. Entire populations ready to fight. He smiled grimly and sent a message to Earth Command. They think they're hunting prey. Someone should tell them they just woke up a predator. The solar cycle of preparation had begun. The Verkathi were coming, and humanity was getting ready.